All right, so we're here at the Ship Lantern Inn over in Marlborough. We've crossed the bridge, and we're here to clarify a little Chef Boyardee drama that took place on the show a couple of weeks back. Jess is sitting in front of two lovely cans of Chef Boyardee, one beef ravioli, the other spaghetti and meatballs.
We all know how it went last time when I had Chef Boyardee for the first time.
There was a little gagging.
A little bit.
But it's good stuff.
You didn't let me heat it up.
Next time we'll let you heat it up. But we found out as we were talking about this that there's an actual local tie to Chef Boyardee. And we're joined by Mike Foglia, who's the owner here at the Ship Lantern Inn. And Mike is going to give us a little bit of history about Chef Boyardee. Now, it was your grandfather that started this?
Well, he was one of the four original partners. And by the way, if you do heat it up, you probably wouldn't have gagged
I
on
probably
it.
wouldn't have.
And we don't serve it here at the restaurant. But my granddad, along with like Hector Boyardee and the two brothers, Paul and Mario, came to this country as really poor teenagers, like in 1915, 1916. And they all got in the restaurant business in New York City. They were all busboys, waiters, cooks, and whatever. But coming from the same town, a small town called Bercetto in northern Italy, in Parma, they all came together. We're all best of friends, and they were looking to make extra money. So they started a little company where they started putting on like dinners for like churches or groups and stuff like that. And then they got involved with some marketing people who loved the product and whatever. And the original product actually was a kit. It was just like a dry spaghetti and sauce, and you would cook the spaghetti in the sauce, and it was all bundled up in like a kit. And then they got involved with some marketing people, and they came up with the idea of canning the product. So none of these guys had more than a third grade education. And Hector was the biggest partner, and that's the man on the can, Hector. And I knew him as a kid very well when I was young. I had dinner with him many times. And Hector, even though he had they all had like third grade education, very limited education, he was a really elegant guy. Spoke beautiful English. His just the way he spoke. And my granddad was a little more rough-hewn, so it was interesting to see them. They were best of friends, to see them interact. And I knew the whole family, their extended family and their sons, and we've all known each other over the years. So they developed this process, and all of a sudden, like this being Milton, New York, they opened up a plant in Milton, Pennsylvania, ironically, and they'd started this small company. And my granddad's big contribution was, so like they started in like 1935. My granddad had already bought this restaurant in 1925, but they started the company in 35. He still had restaurants in New York and had a couple boarding houses and stuff. And he came up here and he started making some contacts at West Point. So he puts a dinner on down at West Point.
Oh, that's great.
And in the mess, as lore has it, as the story has it, he snuck in the back door of the mess some cases of red wine. So instead of in those metal pitchers, the cadets getting juice or whatever they got, they got a little glass of red wine.
Nice.
So my grandpa loved the stage.
Yeah.
He loved the stage. So at the end of the dinner, my grandfather gets up in front of all the cadets in the mess, and he puts his hands up in the air and he goes, "Young blood of America," because one thing we are is very patriotic here. We always have been, always will be. "Young blood of America, tell me what you think about Chef Boyardee." And these guys all jumped up, and I guess there were female cadets then, but everybody jumped up and was yelling and screaming, "We love it, we love it." And my grandfather said, "It was the wine, not the pasta."
I love it.
But through that, they got the Army and Navy contracts during World War II, and then the thing got really, really big.
So Chef Boyardee is a national treasure. Like, this is something that got our troops and the men and women that defended our freedoms through some tough times.
Think about this. Think about how crazy this is. They came up with an idea, and because it's a pre-cooked product. Okay,
Yeah.
You heat it up, you microwave it, you do whatever you're going to do in a pan or pot or whatever. But back then, they tested, and I don't know how far he told me about it, how far they went with it. They tested a field unit, where they could put out in the field in the mess if they weren't near a base,
Right.
of a 50 where they took a 50-gallon drum, sanitized it, and filled it up 50 gallons of pasta,
Wow.
and developed a heating unit underneath it to heat it. So like if they were out in the
Like a
out
sterno?
in combat zones or wherever they were away from base, they could just heat this whole thing up, stir it up, and they could serve it. So that was something that was one of the things I remember, the great stories my grandfather told me. So yeah, it's quite the story. I mean, these guys,
It's
like I say,
amazing.
were uneducated, but it got a little big for them to handle. So in '53 they sold it to American Home Products, which is primarily a pharmaceutical company, and then American Home became Wyeth. And then in like the '90s, Wyeth sold that food division because they wanted to concentrate on pharmaceuticals to ConAgra. And ConAgra, actually, the chairman of the board was in last week, and he'd never been here before, and he went crazy when he heard the story. And I gave him.
Can you show us? Can you show us the picture? We're gonna look at the picture. Can you point out your grandfather?
Okay.
Hang on, let me get in there.
Yeah, that's Hector. That's the man on the can. Like you
Man
get
on the can.
You get the man on the can. You get these companies with these fictitious characters like Aunt Jemima and all this other stuff, and
This
but
guy's a real
that was a
deal.
real guy.
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
him, and that was my granddad. And then there's a couple names I know there, but the other Boyardee brothers, I'm not sure which is which. That actually was my Uncle John, and there were two sons, my Uncle John and my dad. My dad was too young to make the picture. My Uncle John made the picture, but obviously was too young to rate a fedora. So, but he did get the carnation. So, yeah, and so yeah, it was quite the success story. And I mean, there's a lot of cool stories I could tell you.
Yeah.
About the company and some of the stories that my granddad told me that were just simply amazing about guys with limited education but just had a great work ethic and were bright people.
That was the American dream too,
Yeah, back then.
See, look, see, Mike, we're turning her.
You
We're
are.
turning
Okay,
her.
we're
See,
turning her.
we got
We're
her.
gonna turn her.
It took us a few minutes, but we got her. She's ready to go home and eat
what
dinner.
we're gonna do is one of my chefs are in now. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take one of these in there. We might tweak it a little bit. We might rework it a little bit so that we get some positive press on this product.
He made me eat it cold.
Yeah.
That's the
I
thing.
know. This stuff is not meant to be eaten cold. So
Listen, there were many a nights when I was attempting to go to college that I was eating that stuff straight out of the can and had no problem with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
I feel like
loved
you
it.
still do
I
that
got
now
to tell you,
today.
we run a nice place here, but I do pop one in the microwave once in a while myself.
When
I'm in a pinch.
When your granddad sold, when they sold to the bigger companies, did you get the black card that says anytime you go into a
Lifetime
store you get a free
guarantee.
can?
They still charge me. I tell them that. I go to the store. I say, that I know that guy.
Yeah.
That's
On the can, I know
That's
that.
Hector.
That's Hector.
That's Hector today. I said, it's not even. It's Hector today. That's Hector today. Can I throw a couple of these in my pocket? And they say, no. Sorry, no.
They did a great job on the artwork
Yeah.
because it really does look like him.
Well, what this man was saying, his name was Steve Goldstone, was his name, and what he was saying, he goes, it's unusual for a brand in terms of how they keep the brand contemporary, how they've kept the image and stuff pretty much the same as it's been since the beginning. Now, obviously, they weren't putting these kind of packages together way back when.
Yeah.
There were no microwaves back then. But it's pretty cool that how it evolved and how it's still a brand that's withstood the test of time.
Right.
Because it's been around, like I say, since 1935, in some version
Right.
or another. And my granddad told me stories about. He said, Mikey, he used to call me as a kid. He says, Mikey, Hector and I went to Italy, and there was a guy, and he was pressing olive oil. We bought all the olive oil he could make, and I wish I had the book. I had a book that was a treasure, and it showed all these pictures of Model A trucks bringing in thousands of bushels of tomatoes to the loading docks. It showed this one picture which he said we bought. Like I said, we bought all the oil this guy could produce. He could press, and it showed the picture of the room he was talking when they bought this oil. You could not see the end of the room. There were 5-gallon tins, about 8 high, about 15, 20 across on each side with an aisle down, and you could not see the end of the warehouse. And so I had a contractor try to, like put in today's dollars, this is a number of years ago, how much oil that was. And it was, it was millions and millions of dollars of oil. Wow. But, they all were very simple guys, like my granddad.
It's very interesting.
Yeah,
it really is.
They were true American success stories. And they all were, it was the American dream personified, and they all were humble guys.
So, Jess, I got to ask, is this changed your opinion on the Chef Boyardee brand?
Of course it has. But I'm saying, even though I never ate Chef Boyardee, I was so familiar with it. Like you said, it didn't change. Like, this is it.
This is it.
We're getting near lunchtime if you want. We've got a great menu, but if you really want Chef Boyardee, I will make those.
I was going to say.
I don't think we want to try those cans. They're those cans are about 50 years old, so I don't think we might that might not turn out too well.
We looked at your menu, and again, if you guys watching the video or listening on the air, if you want a good meal, I'm telling you, check out their menu and come here to the Ship Lantern Inn in Milton, right on 9W. You can't miss it. It's basically in between Highland and Marlboro, and all you got to do is come in and
look for the big sign.
Yeah, it's a huge sign out front, and their menu is it's definitely not Chef Boyardee, but it's Chef Boyardee's good, but this is better. I think.
Listen, if you absolutely insist on Chef Boyardee, we do keep a couple around.
See?
Out of nostalgia.
I love it.
But I do. We abhor violence. We abhor violence, and no one's ever struck me here in the restaurant. So I'd prefer to keep it that way.
I love it, Mike. You've been a great sport, man. We really appreciate you letting us come in and take a couple of minutes of your time. Jess, there's lunch for you. I told you I was buying you lunch. I told you.
You can shake him up a little bit.
Yeah.
Once
You didn't even do that either. He just put the fork in there and he didn't eat it.
Thank you again. What's the website again?
ShipLanternIn.com.
All right, ShipLanternIn.com. And we appreciate your hospitality. Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you. God bless.